All right, there we go. Hey guys, Bunky here, Bunkman Hangout, and today I've got the absolute pleasure of talking to a good buddy of mine, and it's Nolan, not Sackett. We met and flew together in Afghanistan as contract pilots with a program called JAVAMan. And before I get to that, just real quick, for those watching for the first time, please like and subscribe. It really helps my brand new channel. So JavaMan was a program in which we flew Super King Airs. They were labeled as MC-12s. I think MC-12
Air
whiskeys,
Force.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
King Air.
okay, yeah. And so, there's pics here. Intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. Think of us as a kind of like a spy plane. We had two pilots. We had a baller, and then we had an intel weenie in the back of the aircraft. And we would do mostly pattern of life, but there are times where we would go dynamic. And if we found someone on a list, we might go after them. And think of us kind of like as a spotter. And then we would link up with a shooter, which would be like a sniper, and then we would execute the target. So we'll get a bit more in that. But Nolan, if you want to take it away, just a brief intro, who you are, where you're from, and what got you into flying.
Well, I'm from Minnesota originally. Graduated high school, went in the Air Force. Was in the Air Force for 8 years.
What'd you do in the Air Force?
It was a aircrew life support troop.
Okay.
Aircrew survival stuff.
Alrighty.
I got injured. I was racing motocross at the time, and the squadron commander said, "Hey, you better find something else to do." So I started flying. Got out of the Air Force, finished up my MP program, aviation maintenance,
Okay.
and then finished up flying. Started skydiving. Fell into the Blackwater world, and
Okay.
that's how I got into the contract flying.
Okay. So, I mean, you're flying. So you started flying. You just, pick a random flight school and just start taking lessons. You did that way?
Yeah, I just did Part 61 up at the local airport.
Okay. All right.
Just out that way.
Did you use your, like a GI Bill?
I did. I did.
Okay.
I used my GI Bill for the aviation maintenance portion and my multi-engine commercial.
Okay. Awesome. So how did you first get started in this sort of, contract flying?
Well, I was skydiving and ran into a place called Farrad Enterprise. They were providing lift for us. They were out of North Carolina. And I was a pilot mechanic, so I went out there and we did some stuff out at Pinal and whatever with Blackwater. And that's how I got essentially enrolled into it or got exposed to it. And I took a short stint from there and went and flew air ambulance. And then from air ambulance, I ran into some guys that were flying the Graybirds over in Iraq. So I went over there and started there in 07.
Oh, you started, okay, no, 7. So, all right. So most of the pilots, I would guess about 98% of the pilots in these programs are former military, be it retired or just, in the service and they start. So we had a few civilians like yourself who were, I say civilian only. What I mean by that is, as far as they're flying, they only flew civilian. And the biggest thing was having a clearance. So did Blackwater get you a clearance, or did you have a clearance in the Air Force and it just carried over?
No. So when I went over in 07, because I had one previously in the Air Force and it was less than 10 years. So they were able to,
Yeah.
I still had to do the SF-86 and go through the whole process and stuff.
Okay.
But it was a long road, but I eventually got it. I was on what's called an interim security clearance.
Yeah.
And then when I went over there, it's finally got the stamp of approval, and then I had it ever since. So.
Gotcha. That's kind of a big deal. I knew a few folks when I used to do it, and they were civilian, and they said, "Hey, man, how do I get in this?" And the big thing is they did not have a clearance, and sometimes the companies, they don't want to spend the money to get it; they would rather you already have it.
Right.
So yeah, that really in the contract world that is your way in, is having that clearance.
Yep. Yep.
So you went to Iraq in 07. What was the mission there? What were you flying?
It was with a program called Angel Fire. It was a program developed out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It was a persistent ISR platform. So we basically just sat over Fallujah and watched everybody. So sun up to sundown.
Was that a King Air?
That was a King Air. Yeah, that was a
Okay.
King Air 90.
Okay. Small one.
Yeah. It's just two people. Everything was controlled from the ground or whatever. Then I went to a 200 program, flew the King Air 200 for a while, and then fell into the Dash 8 world and flew in Iraq in the Dash 8.
Okay. And with the Dash 8, was that ISR as well?
It was, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Uh, when you flew the Dash 8, so was there one ball, one sensor down there, or were there multiple?
Well, that one was kind of an anomaly. There was only one of one. The actual tail number was N1000. So if you guys want to look it up on the internet, there's pictures of
Okay.
it. It's no longer. I think it's destroyed. They destroyed it. It had a long nose. They called it the three ball. We had a star radar in the nose, and then we had two. I think there were two MX-20s out on the sides,
Okay.
and so then we had a suite of a bunch of people in the back that ran
Okay.
out and stuff. So,
How many folks were in that aircraft?
so with the pilots, 12, I think
Oh my
10.
God. Really? That many?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was a bunch of people, but
Okay.
I think a normal, if I remember right, a normal was probably six in the back and two up front. So,
Okay. All
yeah,
right. And, our missions when we flew the King Airs were about 4 hours long. How long were
yeah.
they in the Dash 8?
Well, that one we had the aux tanks, but we couldn't fill them because we were already overweight.
Yeah, with all the stuff.
So,
Yeah.
so we would land at Baghdad, go get dinner, gas up, and then finish out. So we were trying to do 8 hours a day, but we about seven for the day.
Okay. All right. Did you fly every day or was it like a day on, day off?
It just depended on what the mission was or what they needed,
Okay.
uh, and how many pilots, of course, we had. So
Sure. Of course. Yeah.
sometimes it was 3, 4 days in a row.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What was it in '07? What was the pay like? And for again, for those who who've never done this, the the big reason a lot of us do this is because the pay is pretty damn good.
I want to say on that program it was like 550, 650 a day. I think
Okay.
it
So
was.
yeah, I mean, that's about what it was back, in that time frame.
Yep.
Okay. So you did the Iraq thing, and was that like us, 2 months on, 2 months off?
It was 90.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
so it was a little longer, but it
Yeah,
was
a
fun.
little longer, but
Still six
time
months
off
off.
is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so when did you get to the JAVAMan program?
So what had happened was, is since I already had Dash 8 experience, they were setting up a new Dash 8 program, which was going to head over to Bagram. And I was on that, and I happened to be sitting in the chow hall one day and essentially got recruited for JavaMan in the Dragon DFAC, if you remember. um, I said, sure, yeah, whatever. So came home,
Okay.
got geared up, left that place, and
Okay.
ended up at Java.
And just started that. What year was that?
2012.
2012. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I retired from Navy on let's see, 1 April of 13, and I started the ground training in August of 13 for Java Man. And I had I'd interviewed for regional airlines because at the time I think it was, hey man, I want to be an airline guy, and the
Yeah, yeah,
airlines weren't really hiring. They'd hire kind of onesies and twosies,
yeah.
and I had gone home with Air Wisconsin. And dude, yeah. So the
Air whiskey.
pay, yeah, air whiskey, man. So I went to ground school and I'm in the Sims, and dude, I'm just hating it. And I'll never forget because my paycheck every 2 weeks was I think it was like $714 after taxes, right? And
Yeah.
it was just garbage. And I got more than the rest of the guys because I didn't need insurance. So a lot of these folks who were there had to pay for insurance. So their paychecks were like $550,
Guys at
per
McDonald's
paycheck.
Drive-Thru were making more than
Yeah,
regional.
I mean, it was just ridiculous, and I was kind of bitching, complaining, and I get a message from you remember Sergio?
The
Serge, yeah,
oh yeah,
yeah,
sir,
yeah,
sir.
Serge, yeah, yeah. He flew for UPS and all that. Yeah, I get a message, hey, dude, Monk, why don't you come out here? And I'm like, I don't know. And at the time, I think it was 750 a day starting out. Yeah. And so I'm like, no, okay. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And I went out there and with Java program, but I started, actually flying with S4. So, all right. So the way the program works, folks, is you do 60 on, 60 off. You can ask for more. You can ask for less, but most of the time they're not going to let you do less. They're going to, let you do more, of course. And so my first deployment, if you're going to call it that, was December of 2013. I get out there. There's Java Man, and there aren't enough instructor pilots, so they send me over to S4, which is right next door. And we were right next door, both of us, to the 160th, the famous 160th for the Army, and started flying there. So then we meet. I think in 2014, I want to say my second tour is when we met.
Yep, I would say that's pretty accurate because I was
Okay.
getting close to being done.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd been right around there.
Yeah. Okay. And that particular tour, we just talked about, the hours we flew like 9 on, 1 off,
Yeah,
and we flew the, 06 to 10 a.m. flights. And it was quite an adventure. So for you, I mean, what were some things that, missions that stood out for you?
I remember taxiing out. I don't know if you were here over there for this one, but we were taxiing out. We had our goggles on, and there's an airplane sitting on its tail because they had unloaded the front. It was a
Oh,
L-1011.
oh, really?
Yeah, there's pictures of it online
Oh,
somewhere. But I guess just the normal grind. You sit out to the hold short line, getting ready to take off, then a rocket attack would happen.
yeah.
Now
Then you sit there.
your night just got extended,
Yeah.
so you're going to be out there longer, and
Yeah.
you might miss the chow halls, and yeah, it was
Yeah.
some of the stuff.
That was always, because we want to eat, right? And
Right.
so, it was like, oh man, we just got extended. We're sitting there, forever. And then we may have to go get gas because they're going to
Well,
launch us to fly,
then they got
250 miles south.
what people need to understand is they got these failing systems, which was in the Navy was called the Sea-Whiz, correct?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
9 millimeter Gatling gun.
Yep.
And when they first put those in, they said they were never going to shoot them over the base because they had exploding rounds on them.
Yeah.
Well, that lasted a week.
Yeah.
So they're shooting them off all over the place, and
Yeah.
when that stuff explodes, it's sharp, heavy metal. So they got to sweep the runway or the taxiway, and we got to taxi back so they can go look at the tail to make sure there's no holes or damage to the airplane.
Yep. Because that shit is hot when it comes down.
We get a swallow of gas, and it's sharp. Get a swallow of gas, and then we go back. And then by the time we're going out to relieve our guy we're supposed to relieve, they're out of gas. They're upset.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, that kind of stuff.
Because you'd be out there and you're like, okay, your relief is not going to be on time, so throttle back, and you're going to be out there an extra hour, and then you're like, okay, so am I going to make chow? And then am I going to be able to make it back without bingo or having to go to I don't know, depending on where you're at, Kandahar, or go into the capital there at Kabul. It was just always, if you remember, just kind of a shit show, man. It was always something going on.
We were holding one time over Jinri because the base was under attack. And I remember Trey Higgins, Stinger.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Yes, but him and I were holding one day, and of course we're in the pro line, so it kind of sets up the hold for you. So it's kind of a no. We're sitting there, and we're in the hold the correct way, and the C-17's above us going the opposite way in the hold.
Yeah,
it's like, where are you guys going?
Like I said, it was just a clown show at times.
It was just chaotic as heck.
And you'd have aircraft coming back, all aircraft, right? And so we would arrive. You'd have King Airs that are slow. You had Vipers coming in, big aircraft, that sort of thing. And were you out there? This was January 4th of 14, when the King Air, not from our program, it was from another program. I think there were 3 on board.
Yeah, they short of the runway. Yeah, they came in right after us.
Yeah.
We came in, a C-17 landed, and then they were coming in behind the C-17, and they went in the dirt.
And they spun in, and
I don't know. Wake turbulence.
Yeah. It was wake turbulence, and I was in the aircraft, and we were about to start, and we got a 99 call. We needed an arm helo, miles south of the field. The aircraft went down, so it would delay takeoff, and then they wanted eyes on. Now we heard the Black Hawk. They said, yeah, it's a King Air and 3 unsurvivable. And so we got out there, and we technically, I guess, we had eyes on. We were the first with eyes on, and going infrared, and you could see it was 180 degrees off runway heading, and it hit flat. And
they stalled and spun then.
Yeah, and unfortunately they were all killed, and so
they were right behind us.
Yeah, and they had asked the aircraft if they wanted to extend downwind, and they're like, no, we'll just slow up. And so they did their normal turn from the landing pattern. We're slow. They hit the vortices, man, and it flipped them. And it was touching a few days later. I think it was like 2 days later. We were taxiing out, and the C-17 was there and had troops all lined up on each side, and there were 3 flag draped coffins. And
there was, okay.
Yeah, and it was, hey, welcome to Afghanistan, at least for me, because that was my first time, being in theater and that sort of thing.
I remember one night, it was about midnight local. I get up and you're already sitting outside in the cigar shack or whatever, and I come
Mhm.
walking out with coffee and talking to you guys, and all of a sudden that dish guy at the end of the runway took off shooting at that C-17. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember, and because we could hear. Okay, so the guns, sound like a gun, but this one, do you remember? I'm like, well, that's we're all like, that's a more of a thumper, and because it was that 12.7 millimeter, and they end up hitting that C-17, and it turned. I mean, it looked like it arced right into it, and it did. I think it took 2 hits. It took out like the far, what we would call Navy starboard engine on the right side. It took that out with the explosive round. The other one went right through the
The
fuselage.
fuselage, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we were watching the tracer rounds go up after it.
yeah, man. So
I remember finishing my coffee and I said, well, I'm off to work. We'll see you later.
yeah, you're like, just another day. I mean, they wouldn't waste, an asset like, which my understanding is the next day they fired on Vipers and we were ready for them. And they, I think a helicopter and Apache took care of that. I think that was the next day, next morning.
Remember after they were shooting, you could hear the guys out on the perimeter just open up in that
Yeah,
direction.
just fight. Yeah, and I don't think they would risk certain weapon systems, on small targets like us. But if they could, shoot down a big target like that, then that's something they would certainly
Well, they wouldn't be able to
try to
hit us.
do. Yeah,
They shoot at noise anyways.
yeah,
They knock
exactly. Yeah. I
your up
mean,
out and
you could see that thing, when our lights go out. So basically, when we took off at night, we would turn the lights out, so it was harder for them to, to see us and shoot us. And we would never know, folks, if we were being shot at, except that, the baller would drop the ball and then we would look at the tape later and you can see little sparkles, from the AK, shooting at our
ground plates that
slow, yeah, at
that
our
day
slow King Air.
we took off. I was AC that day, and I briefed the guys. Said, "Hey,
Hmm.
I'm going to ask for an early right turn out of here because we are not going to the end of the runway."
Yeah.
So as soon as we got airborne, we peeled around the tower and took off that way. So we didn't, because I didn't know if they were still active or what. I wasn't going to be the one to find out.
Right.
That's a
And
big round.
yeah, no, absolutely, dude. Firing AKs is one thing, but a 12.7, which is basically a 50 cal, man, it's the last thing you want to get hit
That's
at,
a
in the, in the mighty C-12, War King.
like I said before, they couldn't see what they were shooting at. They were
No,
just shooting at noise.
they're shooting blind. And the funny thing is that, the Air Force, you know, the aircraft were painted in civilian colors, and maybe that's for like, back home. So it wouldn't look conspicuous, just looks like a civilian plane. But in Afghanistan, there's no civilian, like, there's no general aviation of aircraft flying
There's no
around.
charter flights coming out of
Right.
Boston.
Yeah. There's nothing like that. And then of course, they're like, hey, you want to be sneaky, but it was like we planned all the events were, in blocks, like 5-hour blocks. So
Well, they knew it.
everyone would launch and come back. They knew.
There was a Congo line of us. I mean,
Yeah.
anytime there was a push, it was you sit in line for 10 minutes waiting to
Yep.
take off, and it's all us.
Yep.
Every day, same time.
Yeah. I mean, dude, they absolutely knew, and we weren't fooling anyone.
OPSEC was out the window on that deal.
Yeah,
So
that absolutely. So what would you, I'm adding, stories because we both,
oh, yeah, you
experienced a lot of the same stuff. What was like, the craziest strike that you were on?
got oof. Well, they all kind of blend together.
Yeah,
Uh,
I
I'd say
know.
some of the toughest flying we did was up on the 00 SEP on the border.
Yeah,
Flying up on that was tough because if you cross the border, it's
right.
chicken or beef the next day. You're going home.
Yep. And
That was
you could get fired, and, you're definitely going home,
Yep.
not getting paid. And, I mean, you're going to get paid as you get home, but then you may or may not come back depending on how,
How
what,
severe
yeah, what
was.
you did. And
Times
the
you
winds almost always, as we flew these special mission birds, can't really go into what they did, but with the tailwinds, and they would push you into Pakistan, so you had to be very careful. I mean, very careful, but they wanted you to get up on the border. And then you could also see aircraft oftentimes like on the Paki side, and those were their F-16s that would come up who, were just
trying to
chomping
take.
at the bit. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Waiting for it to cross.
Yeah. Just waiting for, maybe something that they could shoot at. Um, One thing that, Okay, so there's, we got IDF all the time. So constant mortar rounds, all the, and
Yep.
actually you were talking about the gun. So, one night I had gone outside and I'd taken some Ambien and it's like 0400 or something. And I'm in flip flops and a tank top and underwear. And it's back when we had the barracks where, you had to go outside,
The two
you know,
tier.
yeah, to go to the head. And right when I get outside, I hear two thumps, which I should have known or incoming, and all of a sudden it's incoming, and the gun. If you remember at the barracks, there was a gun, the
Yep.
6 barrel, and it goes off, and all this was in a matter of seconds, and it's so damn loud, and then they start exploding, and then I hear this huge boom, and I feel like concussion. So I guess it exploded. I guess.
Incoming round.
Yeah, and I'm holding on to there are bars out there, I'm just like, fuck. And the shrapnel that came down was, you could see it. This is July, but how hot it was. It's steaming and it comes down my arm. My arm, I have burnt marks, all the way. And I'm like, and I'm sure, a soldier, a Marine, to hear pilots talk about this, they'd be like, oh my God, that's nothing. But that's things that we're pilots, we are
Right.
not soldiers. And so stuff that we are not used to. And yeah, that was probably, and again, I was, like you, I was probably in 50 to 60 IDF attacks at least. They were normally far off. You hear the boom, 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 but there were some that were close. And like you, I was actually in aircraft one night. We were taxiing out, and they told us to stop, and because we were under attack. And I guess one landed close, and the aircraft shook. I mean, didn't see anything. And then you felt,
We were there when the B-1s laid
yeah.
down those bombs just off the base.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh
Is
yeah,
that what you're
dude.
talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, that shook
So
there.
I mean, so those were things that you had to live with, and but for me, I mean, the scariest for me was the weather. We
The
we
weather was
didn't, yeah, it was dog shit, and we didn't get. It's not like the United States where center or approach, they have radar and they can back you up on the weather and go, hey man, 10 to
no,
15 miles in front of you, you've got moderate to severe precipitation. You can get any of that, man. And how
typical day.
often did, well, I say, how often did our weather radar work?
It was garbage.
Yeah, it was just crap. It was a crapshoot. Yeah.
Typical day in the winter coming back from being on station is you're tired, you're hungry, you're out of gas, and you're flying through ice.
Yep. Fucking,
That's standard day.
and the certain, special mission birds, you weren't supposed to fly through ice, but dude, we did all the time. I mean,
You're not
uh,
getting out there.
yeah. So the one bird with the giant box on the bottom, guys, I mean, it looked like a refrigerator. It was like this box. And, we're coming back, and I'm to the northeast, and I've got max power. I'm hungry. I want to get back, and these things could do maybe 220 indicated,
With
right?
all the crap hanging off. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all like crap. I mean, that's about it. And dude, I was hitting maybe 180. That's all I do because I had ice all over the fucking thing, and we got down to 190, and because you had the mountains in between us and Bagram, and things just went. The plane just shaking, and I'm like, geez, man. And of course, once we got past and we got down, then all the stuff starts to melt off. But we were always flying, right? I mean, always flying with that crap. Um,
There was a hit we did. We were we were on an op, and they thought they had this guy pinned down. They
mhm.
thought they had him dead to rights. Well, here they brought in some A-10s, laid
Yeah.
down 500 pounders.
Hmm.
Here was a fucking scarecrow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Just dudes sitting out there, and they're like, "Oops."
Were you up
Um,
that night when Nicholas Check got hit? Were you flying that night?
I don't remember. No.
Okay. Yeah, I was
Well,
up that night.
what happened with that?
It was a team guys. They went in, assault group went in to get this Doctors Without
Hmm.
Borders got rolled up in Kabul. Well,
Okay.
they went to rescue him, and they breached the compound, got in there, got the door open. He took a round through the head. They
Oh, I didn't
managed,
know that. Oh,
yeah, they managed to kill everybody, and
okay.
then they got the doctor out. But yeah,
Right.
that was a rough night.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You can read about
I.
it. It's online. You can read about it. I went to a
Okay.
service there at the flagpole. They had
Okay.
a little
Oh,
giving
gotcha. Yeah.
memorial. Yeah. It was pretty. It was
little
pretty
memorial. And for those who are curious what the cockpit looked like, so basically the aircraft had a lot of stuff in it. It was always hot. When you got in the cockpit, there was a lot of extra equipment. Okay, so you had like some avionics up front, and then we would have our computer screens that would kind of sit right in front of our face. And the pilot would be to his left, co-pilot to the right. And I think we also the co-pilot would take a laptop out,
yeah,
as I recall, and I could work certain things. And then, of course, in the back on the left side of the aircraft was where the baller sat, and that was his station, and he would operate, the ball from that point. And then we would have an active duty person in the back of the aircraft. And
that's correct.
they were of all, it could be Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps. We had one guy was an Australian SEAL, Special Forces with
I
those
remember him.
guys.
Yeah,
Yeah, do you remember him? Yep.
yeah. We
And
tried to sell us some equipment.
oh
Remember?
yeah, yeah. Um, um, I was going to say, I remember one night, so when, you see an explosion, you hit something, it's not like Hollywood where there's all this, flame and whatnot. But there was one time, and this was the last strike that I remember where we hit a target in. It was a van that the aircraft before us had been following, and supposedly had IED stuff, and there were 7 guys inside. So we link up with not a Pred, but PC-12.
Oh, okay.
And
Yep.
yeah. And so, they hit the van twice, and the van just basically stops. And I want to say there were 3 squirters who get out of the van of the 7 guys. And so it's daytime. We see it get hit. The guys go out, they're trying to hide. And next thing you know, man, the whole screen like just goes pure white. And there was a secondary explosion. And I actually looked down, was able to see it. Yeah, there was a huge boom. That was the only time I ever saw like a Hollywood, explosion, because the warheads, the IED stuff went off, and I was like, oh, okay, so that's what a giant explosion looks like. Big mushroom cloud and all that, man. Yeah.
The only thing remotely close to that, I was walking down Disney once, and they decided to put a V-bid right there at the main gate. I
Hmm.
don't know, that killed like 16 Afghanis. No Americans were injured. Remember that?
I was not there, but I do. Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah. And if you remember too, do you remember they built like a new chow hall, and it was down off Disney, right off where the hobby shop was with all the jewelry and all and the exchange. You had that, and this happened. I think this happened. I want to say in August of 16. I had left the company already, and I always thought too. I'm like, all it takes is one dude to sit there, and I guess that's what happened. He'd been building the best for like 5 years, and he
Oh,
went out and he detonated himself for
is
whatever
that
reason, huh?
was that during the marathon or the 5K they were running?
I'm not sure. He didn't kill that many though. It was a small number for whatever reason. The blast, it killed a few people, but I'm not even sure if it killed Americans or just killed, other Hondis. I don't recall.
You
But
remember you remember the ice cream man?
yeah, yeah, I
You
do.
were flying that night when they rolled him up.
No, I was not there when it happened, but I remember.
I was flying that night,
Oh,
and
were you?
the assault force was just right outside the compound, right outside the
Okay.
wall, whatever, and the baller was listening to what they were doing, and of course we're chatting about our stuff up front. And all of a sudden he
Hmm.
calls up the front. He's like, "Hey, they just rolled up the ice cream man." I'm like,
Yeah.
"What?" So apparently
Wasn't.
he was dirty. So
Yeah.
he, probably sitting there feeding us ice cream and collecting intel, and
Yeah.
only knows what he was doing to the ice cream. I never ate it. I didn't like the looks of the guy. I didn't trust
Yeah.
him
I
with
mean,
ice
wasn't he
cream.
putting like arsenic in
I
it?
think
He
he was
was.
in the coffee or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was doing something, small doses, right? And so, yeah, I remember. Do you remember the sniper? And I forget what year. I want to say 2015, maybe. And
I wasn't there at 15.
okay,
I was already
okay,
down south.
all right. I was with John Newcomber. That's the colonel,
Yeah,
and
I
we're
remember.
walking, and we heard a round. So by the time we hear it, it's long gone. And
Right.
we're like, well, that's odd. We're like, there's. Why would that, why is a bullet go overhead? Well, apparently there's a sniper off and he was just taking shots. He didn't hit anyone. And so my understanding is that he did hit a light like that night. And they were like, what the hell, man, this
Oh,
light.
right
And
behind
so,
that in the back. I was there for that. That was he hit the light right up on the second tier of the
yeah,
ground.
yeah,
And
yeah.
they put
Okay.
that
So it was 14.
yeah,
Yeah.
they put that black fence up there so you could hide behind it. It's like
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. No. Yep. Just, again, we're talking about small things, in yeah, the daily life of, being a contractor, overseas, and at least for us as pilots, in Bagram. Uh, you said you went down south. Did you go to South Kandahar? Did you fly to there?
No, I was up north for a while. I started out
Oh,
up north and then I moved down to Bagram. But I was in
oh,
Bagram previously flying the Dash 8.
okay.
Um, prior, and that's when I got recruited in the chow hall, that
Okay.
dragon.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I did a total of, I think I did, like you were talking about, 9 deployments. So just, it was 18 months and change.
I want to say I did 7. I think I did 7, and I finally had my fill. And
Yeah, man. Yeah. It,
a lot of Christmas. I always volunteered for Christmas because I didn't have a family to speak of, so
right.
or anything. So I always, hey, I'll take your Christmas slot for you, so that we can
Yeah.
go. I did that a lot.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of Thanksgivings, and you remember all that stupid stuff they made in the chow hall for
Yeah.
Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I do, man. That was for, the military folk who,
Yeah.
they have no choice, in the matter that they have to be there. And you remember there was this guy, I met him. Okay. So he was a civilian only, and he came in, met him one night, and, he, was tired. He just gotten there. It's his first time. And that night we have like, multiple IDF attacks, incoming all night long. And then it was like, a few days later, I didn't see him anymore. And so I asked her, like, oh no, dude, he came in the next morning and was like, oh, I'm done.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And they sent him home, man. He was like, I can't do this.
Who were
He was
the
not ready for that.
Who were the guys? I don't know if you know any of the guys that were on that airliner that were headed back to Dubai from Bagram. They were forced to land in Iran. Do you know
No,
that?
no. I remember that happened. I don't recall if I knew anyone that was on board that thing,
They were. Can
which
you imagine? So you know how nervous they were.
I would have been shitting my pants, man.
They're all like, and they were telling me they were trying to hide their IDs and stuff. And it's like,
right,
really, you're coming from Bagram. Everybody knows you're American. I
dude.
mean,
Yeah, so the company told us, you want to blend in. Okay.
yeah.
So we show up, in Dubai, you know, half of us are bearded. We're all wearing 511 shit, you know. We look exactly like what an American contractor would look like. And the tax cab drivers, they would know. They're like, oh, you're going to Afghanistan, you're going to Bagram, You're like, no, you're in business. No,
Not
yeah. You're like, me? No. And like, no, you're going to Bagram. Like, they just freaking knew, man. Um,
the
the
Irish pub there at the Dubai
Oh yeah,
airport.
yeah, yes. I spent a few hours there once in a while, and I remember I would get like you remember like it was like I forget if it was airline specific. I would just go in and pay for this. It was awesome food, and you could get like you could take a shower, and you could just like it had it had like gourmet food, and it was
Oh no.
just yeah. You get in the computer. They didn't have any sleeping rooms though, but they did have in the airport. They had things where you could like rent out a bed in these little cubicles, I guess, which I never did, but uh,
And when I first started going over there, we were first class to and
yeah,
from, and then it was
they
just first
changed
class
that.
to,
Yeah,
and then it was in the back on the way back.
yeah. Towards the end, dude, you were in the back, in the
Front
little bitty seats. I would always pay though. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna spend the $300 and upgrade my seat because it's so worth it.
Oh yeah.
Uh, I think it took longer to get there, but I think because of the winds and stuff and a little bit shorter, I would load up on Ambien and just fucking,
There was a guy, I don't know, maybe he'll watch this podcast, but who was the guy that got on the Ambien and got all liquored up and then took his clothes off and was
yeah,
walking?
you know what? I did not know him, but I know of the story. And basically, he got liquored up, popped some Ambien, then he nuded up. And then, like, he went to the bathroom, then he came out butt naked. And then they were like, yeah, put your clothes back on. And I guess he got in a scuffle.
Yeah.
And the story goes, he wakes up and he's like fucking hogtied, right? And he's got like a robe or something. And the first thing he does is ask for another drink. It's like, hey man, can I get a drink? And I I heard the company did not fire him, man.
No,
They
they didn't
just
fire him. They just that generated a new rule and a letter, of course. And you
what
had to
they're like, no alcohol, mixed with Ambien and no drop and trow on the aircraft.
Right. Yep.
I mean, dude, you can get, in so much trouble doing stupid shit, especially if you're flying, into these foreign countries. If he's coming home, I assume less trouble, but God only knows, man. I mean, you get there, you do something stupid and you're thrown in jail and, in UAE because it's their laws. I mean, they are pretty generous when it comes to, foreigners. It's certainly not flying into Oman or Saudi.
Yeah. Forget
I
that.
mean, yeah, they're very strict. Or Singapore, I mean, you do something stupid there, you're up shit creek. Um, I actually was on a flight. It was going to Afghanistan, and I was sitting in the middle of the aircraft on an emergency row. So there was a galley like right to my left. There was like a wall. It was awesome because there was a seat right there, and there was you know 3 seats. The middle one was empty, and there was a teacher, a German teacher, and so we've been flying for like maybe 4 hours, and I was tired, so I popped an Ambien, and I had like my ears in, and I hear commotion, like what I think is yelling, and I kind of look back, I don't see anything, and I close and I hear it again, and I look over to the teacher. She goes, "That guy is yelling at that woman," and so I look back, and basically at some point, this woman stands up and starts wailing on this dude. Okay. And then chaos ensues. So what happens is he was from Israel, and
Mm.
she was a Muslim woman, and they got into a disagreement on politics. I mean,
Oh,
what could go wrong?
I don't.
So they bring him over into that galley, and so the head flight attendant is a gay dude who's about 5'4". He's got a goatee. It's all white, and he's talking to the dude, and the guy, as he's standing there, he starts yelling that, he wants to talk to the captain. He's like, "I want to see the captain." All right. And I'm looking at his eyes, and his eyes are going back and forth like horizontally. Like, I don't know, what's going on. And so he keeps yelling, "I want to see the captain," and, flight attendants are like, "That's not going to happen. It's just not going to occur." And we're flying into Germany on this leg. And Uh, when it all started down, like a bunch of us contractors, and I'm a big dude, stood up. And so there's like all this, and right in front of him was this big fucking black dude. And he was a contractor for like, I talked to him for a bit. He was former Army infantry, and he was just a big guy. And so, anyways, he comes over, and then the dude keeps looking at the door. The door's not going to open at that altitude, but he
Sure.
keeps looking, and then he says, "I want off the aircraft now." That's what he starts saying. So I stand up, and that big black dude, and we're on either side, you know. And I actually, unfortunately, or fortunately, I was hoping somebody would video this. It'd be my, my moment, because finally I got the dude's face. I'm like, "You need to fucking stand down. You are scaring everyone. You're raising your voice." I said, "You're not getting off this fucking aircraft." And believe me, you see that dude right over there? I mean, this dude was jacked, and I'm big. I'm like, "Dude, you're not gonna be able to do anything." So uh he sits down, and the first thing they do is they offer him a drink, dude. They're like, "Hey, would you like some wine or something?" I'm like,
That's
"That's
the
just
worst
stupid."
thing.
Well, then there were like 6 people who now were very amped up. They were all Muslim, and they start like getting together, and they start talking. And that flight attendant, who I didn't know was gay at the time, he comes up and he yells in this manly drill instructor voice, "You're gonna sit the fuck down. We're not doing this," and blah blah blah. Right? I'm like, well, he handled that. And then he comes up, to thank me. And all of a sudden he's like, hands. He's like, "Thank you so much for helping, sir." And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, his command voice came out when it needed to come out. So yeah, that was the only time flying over there back, all those things where it was like, it was scaring me too. Cause this dude, his eyes, man, just, like
I don't know if you got the knot in your stomach every time before you deployed, you get the
oh yeah,
knee before the
every
knot.
time. Yeah.
I was wondering what that was. I got it all the time, and I thought maybe
It,
it was just me, but
it's anxiety, I think. And, so here's the thing: when we go over there, right? So we've got the IDF shit. We're flying nonstop. We got bad weather, man. Okay. It starts to take a toll on you. And besides, you have stuff that happened, in my career, stuff in your life that happened. And we go from, the story I told you about, where the round explodes. And that, that was the, the one we're flying 9 on, 1 off. I was in a bunch of strikes, and it was just nonstop go. And you're at this level. And then 2 days later, you're back home.
Right.
And things are different. And it was so difficult for me to cope.
It took a while to decompress and get
Yeah.
back. Once you got into the routine again, then you got to
Yeah.
spool back up because you're
Yeah.
going right back over.
Yeah. We
And it
had
was
no time. Yes.
Yeah, we had no zero.
No time to decompress. And then by the time, you're like, okay, I'm getting used to this. I have to go back over there. And that was the thing, is that by my 9th one, I knew I was done.
There's
I'm
guys
like,
that did it for the whole time JAVAMan was in existence.
oh yeah, absolutely. I know. And, some, I knew one, he was a Marine Harrier pilot, and, cause I asked him, he's like, dude, I have to pay my ex-wife, X amount of money. And, I can't start at the bottom of an airline and work my way up. I just don't have
guys
the
that couldn't
luxury.
afford to leave. They had to surrender out.
That's what he said. He couldn't. And so, and then, my buddy John, a newcomer, the colonel, he still does this job, and they pay him. He gets like $550 a day, and he flies out of Africa. I'm like, dude, you're still doing this. But I think financially, he says he has to do it. And I mean, like you, I was just absolutely done. I had, from my Navy days to that, I was absolutely done. And I almost had my first panic attack. Now, I didn't know I was suffering from anxiety back from my crash and all the other shit, but I was on that plane and I was flying from Corpus to Houston, and I couldn't breathe. And I'm like, I can't do this. What the fuck is, something going on? And my buddy, do you remember Mike? I think his name is Mike Hastings.
Yeah,
short guy.
Yeah.
He called me out of the blue and he goes, hey man, I'm working for a company called Wheels Up. You should come over here. And
I did a short stint.
Yeah, I know. And of course, how bad, not Wheels Up, but Gamma Aviation, how bad they were. And so, so.
Back to Afghanistan, I tell people our approach profile when it was good weather, we come in high, like 5 and 5 miles out, 5,000 feet. We'd throw everything out of the airplane, flaps, gear, props forward, and we'd come down to the point where the MFD screen would just give you arrows pointing up, saying pull up. The whole screen would be brown.
The whole time it's screaming, pull up, pull,
yeah, sink rate, yeah. People don't believe me, but that was survival of the fittest. We had to,
you actually had to do that, and especially if they were shooting at you. And I had a brand new guy, and they said maintain 200 knots or faster until 1 mile. And he's like, it's never going to slow down. It's not going to slow down. I'm like, well, watch. You just watch this. I'm like S-turn, and I'm doing everything I can, flaps, gear. And I mean, you had a 12,000 foot long runway.
It was forever.
It was forever. But I mean, it's just, you almost got used to it. You were just like, okay, this is, but my nerves, because, I am not a man of steel. My nerves were shot at the end. I was done.
In fact, speaking of the 12,000 foot long runway, when I was over there in the Dash 8, I got the mains down on the runway, and they said take it all the way down to Alpha. So you got to drive it all the way down the runway. So I never touched the nose down. So I rode the whole runway, aero braking it all the way down. So I got the unofficial record for the longest, as mechanics said, the longest wheelie down the Bagram runway.
And 11,000 foot rollout, basically.
With the nose still in the air.
With the aerodynamic braking. I mean,
I had to add power. I kept the power in, but
keep power in. I mean, it was, by the end, I think I was making $900 a day, I believe, right. And then $1,000 for the instructor pilots a day. I was not an instructor.
I was an IP, and that's why I'm wondering if I was an IP when you came on board. Maybe. I was a maintenance check pilot too, which.
Oh, were you?
I don't know why they decided to do the training over there, but we had to go up there. We stayed close to the airport. We had to go up there and actually shut an engine down.
Yeah. So, depending on the profile. Yeah. I mean,
but
did they pay you more for that, being a maintenance check pilot?
They did. Yeah. It was like $50 a day more.
Like, $50. And I mean, when I was a con pilot C2, I was a maintenance guy, but I just.
But that just put you on the hook for more flight time. It's like, hey, pull an airplane out of the barn. We need to test fly it. So.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, I don't know, one of the guys, I mean, he was busy all the time. He rarely did a regular mission. He was just always doing maintenance flights, because there were a bunch of birds. Yeah. And, maybe you had left that time, but like by the time it was like 2016, we were flying the Air Force bird. So we were we had the white aircraft and we had the gray aircraft, and
Yep. Yeah,
and
no, I was gone before that. You
yeah,
remember, the airplanes we were flying, they put all those 30,000 hours on those airplanes.
I know. They had that
Beach,
one that was like 33,000 hours, I think.
yeah, Beechcraft is like, we didn't intend the airplane to fly this long, but they were
Yep.
doing an inspection every 2 weeks, rolling it through the barn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those things never sat on the ground. They
Yeah.
they flew 16 to 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
It was great.
Um, I don't know if you knew him. I'm not going to say his name, but he was a former Air Force Strike Eagle guy, and he was part of the Liberty program. And um, I had heard this story of a pilot that was doing, or pilots were doing barrel rolls,
Yeah,
and
did they
he
bend one up or something? Was
well,
it?
no, but he got busted because, as the story goes, is that either the act duty guy or the baller left their phone in the aircraft, right? So the
Oh,
maintenance
yeah,
guys
that's what
find
was
it and they go, okay, let's use phone, and it shows video of them doing a barrel roll. And
known.
which I always thought was bullshit. No, but I met the guy who did it. It's like, yeah, he actually he got boarded and was not allowed to fly airplanes for the Air Force anymore. You
So
know.
I wonder. I know Liberty. They were on the corner at the Charlie Gate. You walk
Yep.
in, they were right there on the left.
Yeah.
They had that airplane sitting there for a long time, and it had bent wings. And the Air
Yep.
Force, they had
Yeah.
they had rolled it and bent up an airplane.
It was probably because they didn't do the barrel roll right, which should be a 1G maneuver, and they're probably doing like 3Gs on an aircraft that's not designed for
Right.
3Gs. Not designed to do aerobatics. So,
I,
and I'd gotten there too. The first time was right after they lost at Liberty Bird down south when they spun it into the ground.
yeah, they stalled and spun. Yeah,
Stalled and spun. Yeah, and
slow in the turn,
yeah, and was not paying attention, and
and that's when that directive came out saying that you can push the power levers all the way up to the radar at least for 6 minutes because the engines will hold it. But once you do that, then they said they got to pull the engines through jump.
yeah.
But because they were too scared to push it up over the red.
Yeah, so they're autopilot, and the aircraft commander VSIs it all the way up, dude, and it just starts going, but and it's in holding pattern, so it's climbing without paying attention, and apparently, the aircraft departs, and he didn't take controls until 45 seconds into it, by that time, and I know the last thing the guy in the back had typed back, was my pilots are trying to kill me, and it spun in, and at some point the wings came off, and it was just a missile into the ground.
I
And
tell you what, though, hats off to Beechcraft and Pratt and Whitney. Pratt and Whitney are the people that built the motors, and
yeah,
the Beechcraft is obviously the people that designed the airplane. But
yep.
that's a solid airplane. I flew it, in the civilian world too. I flew corporate a little bit around
Oh, did you?
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good airplane. We never pushed it nearly as hard as what we did over in Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean, I think
We
the
run
King Air is a
parts.
fantastic aircraft. Yeah, I mean, it is. It can take a beating and keep going. The motors are fantastic. It's a very, very easy aircraft to fly.
It
But any
is.
aircraft become unforgiving if you put it in regime of flight where it's not supposed to be. And you may have the skill to do a barrel roll, but a lot of a 1G. But a lot of people don't have that. Then you get the Yahoos who start doing that stuff. And
Yeah.
do you remember the pilot, Army guy, and I'm not sure he was at S4, but I know he flew with us, who who basically flew too close to a thunderstorm, and so the aircraft just looked like, dude, like you took a baseball machine and it just was.
Oh no, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, it was all dented, man. The nose and the wings. Yeah, I saw it. Yeah,
I remember we were coming back one time, and it was crappy weather, of course,
always.
wind, and we got the fuel lights.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then Bagram closed because of the rocket attack. So then now we get in line with everybody else going into Kabul.
Yep.
And it's like when them fuel lights come on, we're done.
Yeah, you have to hang on the blades. Yeah.
Yeah, but so we come in high and fast and held our momentum, and we got in there. But
Yep.
yeah, that was there were some white knuckled rides over there, that's for sure.
There absolutely were, and it was just, you don't have eject seats, and you don't, we were out northeast, and we had a guy. He was a retired '05 light colonel, and great guy. And we were not really paying attention, I guess, but he kept asking, "Hey, what's our bingo? What's our bingo?" And at some point, I looked down, I'm like, "Holy shit, we're at bingo!" and it's 150 knots, like headwind to go back. And so I'm going back. We have 75 nautical miles, and dude, like halfway, we're like, I don't know, 40 miles, and low fuel light left side comes on. So we start to, adjust, and I request let's stay up high as we can. But then there's a tanker track, so we have to go down. And I've got a former Marine Corps, he was a Huey guy, and he had this was his first fixed wing, and I'm like, all right, dude, we're gonna hang on these props. And it just, the whole way back, low fuel light, low fuel light, low fuel light. And we tried to stay up, and then I went idle, and we came down, and we roll out in final, and both of them come on, and stay on. You remember we're supposed to tell the chief pilot, but I'm like, yeah,
You're not a true ISR pilot if you've never landed with the fuel lights.
Right, exactly, man.
So,
That it was almost common.
you over there, the airspace is so congested, and those goddamn predators.
Oh yeah.
Lose link, get lost, and then they just start wandering around.
They just start wandering the skies, which happened a lot. Yep.
And I'll tell you a story when I went to flight safety about that. But
yeah,
if it wasn't for wearing those goggles, I would have ran into one of those things. I just happened to be eyes down in the cockpit, whatever. I look up, I'm like, what in the hell is that? Oh shit, it's a pred. It was coming right at us. Well, it's a pred that nobody warned us about because Kingpin wasn't going to tell us, or whatever. And so thank God we had those goggles, because I was able to see, because they had IR lights. We had IR.
Yeah.
I was just like, you got to be kidding me. But we're doing 500-foot vertical separations all day long over there. And we're doing unmanned aerial platforms. We got tankers. We got fighters. It's just a shit show.
Yeah.
At one time, I was at CAE for Recurrent. And shout out to Dave if he ever watches this. But him and I are in the simulator. And they give us the traffic scenario.
Yeah.
And also it's, traffic. We're just sitting there looking out the window, and he freezes the sim, and he's like, all right, guys, what are you supposed to do when that happens? And we just kind of look at each other. We're like, well, nothing, we're doing it. He's like, no, you're supposed to react. And then he's like, no, this is the way it is overseas. If we react, we're going to run into somebody below us or above us. It's just sit there and watch the show, wait till it gets close. But,
I mean, unless, it gives you an RA where, you have to maneuver. But yeah, I mean, you would, because you were in the kill box. And so just depending on, there's always shit all around. And those night vision goggles, you have to wear them. At the moment I got, up, Europe, all that, I take those things off, man. I'm like,
I after that pred, I wore them religiously at night. Yeah. I always had them. I mean, I'd flip them up, get them on my face.
Sure. Yeah.
I was always scanning the horizon because, that's what happened to that other airplane. They ran into a pred down south.
Oh yeah. Dude, that's right. They did. So, well, that pred, I think, was where it was supposed to be, because they lost, link with it, and it just kind of did its thing. And, it's supposed to go to a certain altitude, and, I'm not sure it just goes level or just fly circles, but it was where it was supposed to be. And that's where they end up hitting it. Yeah.
Yeah. It becomes stupid at that point and just does its own thing. And it becomes a hazard. Nobody warns you about it. Either.
Right. No, exactly, man. So yeah, it's crazy. It's just,
they're sitting back in the States somewhere in a box, and we lost link.
Yeah.
And, hand it back over to the local controller. So I try to tell people just how chaotic it was sometimes. You throw the weather, you throw the traffic, that airport was busy. Bagram was just,
dude, it was crazy. Yeah.
It was constant all day, all
It's like Class Bravo airspace, dude. I mean, in the States, it was just, it was redonkulous at times.
Hats off to those controllers, the local controllers there. They could handle a shit show 24/7, and that's what they did.
Yeah. So, and it was just, once you got outside of that, with the weather, you never had any backup, and there
was no,
yeah.
You're not going into JBAG because that's all snowed in. You're not
exactly
going because that's dirt runway.
They had
what's that?
Well, after I left, you remember there was a crew that ran out of gas down south, man, and they ditched it.
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
Oh, yeah, did you hear about that? Yeah, you can look it up. And they ditched it. I don't know why they ran out of gas. It can't happen if you're not, hawking your fuel. You've got to hawk that fuel, and you have all sorts of winds, and the winds are crazy down there. You just never knew. And so,
what did you do with the airplane? Just blow it up? Then I'm assuming.
I'm not sure what they did with it, but they all survived. They all walked away. But again, I don't know the reasons.
You'd be having an off-field landing now. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, I mean, And at first we carried, handguns, and then we had rifles, but they took all that away from us
Oh, they
at some
did.
point. Mhm.
Oh, let's see. When you and I were flying there, we had the
Yeah, we
rifles.
had that. Well, there was some agreement between the countries. I forget what it's called. So once that agreement went into effect, where the Afghanis took control, we were no longer allowed to have weapons. Be honest, I'm like, okay, unless we did somewhere, I don't need them. I always felt though, walk around base, that's when I want to wear one. That's when I wanted to be armed, because you never knew when one of the, these
Well,
dudes who were just selling stuff would just, decide to, do his jihad.
in some of those valleys, you put an airplane down in there, you're not getting out of that cleaner anyway.
Yeah,
You're gonna, I mean, it's a beer can at that point. You're not even gonna be able to dig yourself out.
you'd have to go up like exactly where it's flat, either down south, right in the middle, or up near, where you used to fly. But what was it? What was it called? Mez?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Mez. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mez.
So,
There are a lot of fields.
but between there, dude, it's jagged mountains, man. And there were peaks out there to like 23,000 feet. It was
Oh,
crazy.
it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
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 You flying along, you take off, bad weather during the day, and you're flying along, and you can see the mountains sticking up out of the.
I know, man. Yeah. And what mountain could you see like on a good weather day way off in the distance?
Oh,
Was
the
it
one in
K-12?
Yeah, I think it was K-12. Everybody
Yeah.
said it was Everest, but I think Everest was further south. I think it was K-12. You could see it when the sun was coming up. You could
Yeah,
see
dude, you could,
it was real pretty.
dude. I mean, way out. It was like 300 miles away, but you could see it. That's how big that and how high that mountain was. But
People go to the top of that.
yeah, I know, man, which is insane. And and so to me, Afghanistan, that was, it was crazy to see these mountains. And then there's the one thing is like you'd see these beautiful lakes, and what you wouldn't see is a single boat. There's no pier. In the
Nothing.
U.S., you would have piers and boats and people partying out there. There's like, no, there's no having fun. You know, I mean, here's this gorgeous lake, and there's nobody doing nothing. Just, it's a country that who just loved to live 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, they still do. I
They
mean,
still
we
do,
had
man.
that. I mean, they're still shitting in the streets for God's sakes.
I
We had
know,
that.
and
We had that one operator in the back. God bless her heart. I'm not going to say her name, but she was training to be a nurse or a doctor or whatever.
mhm.
But she was smart, so she ran that ball, the camera, real well. And a dude took a duker right there, and of course our and
Yeah,
she figured out a way to figure out the surface temperature by how quick that cooled down.
really,
Yeah,
a
I'm
smart
like,
girl.
wow, impressive.
We had just returned from a mission, and one of the other birds returned, and so they're like, dude, you got to see this. And they played. I don't know if you saw this. This is probably 14. And so they're doing pattern of life. Dude, and it's like 3 a.m. in the morning. The dude comes outside to take a shit. So he drops trowel, takes a shit, then he goes up to one of his sheep, freaking just fucks this sheep from behind, man. And
Wow.
you're watching the whole thing. You're like, oh boy, felt sorry
Yeah,
for the sheep. So
people think it's a rumor, but it's fact. I mean, I've
I know
seen it
it's
on
fat.
camera.
Yeah, dude. And
Disgusting.
I remember one day we were doing a pattern life over school, and I felt so sorry for these kids because they've got like, I don't know, it was like, I don't know, dude standing in this yard. These kids were like 6, 7, 8 years old, and he had a big cane. And as they're coming, he's beating them, man. Some kids would fall, and he'd sit there, you watch him, he's just beating them over and over. Like, my God, man. But
The best POL mission I was on. They said follow the guy in the red moto.
mm.
Well, everybody has a goddamn red motorcycle over
Yeah, it's like, hey, follow the guy in the white car, you
there, right?
know. Okay.
So we acquired him, and then he goes into this big bazaar where there's a million people.
Yeah.
We're like, how in the hell? But
Yeah.
the guys in the back, bless their hearts, they were able to figure it out and find him again, and he took off, and we went and followed him, and then they ended up, schwacking him. But
Swacking him, yeah. Yep.
yeah,
I mean, I know, dude, and most of the missions were just that power light. Then, we had the missions, and I was on multiple where we found a guy. And, if he was on the list and he was out in the open,
yeah,
every time that happened, I was in the aircraft, it was the end of that dude's life. And
oh
anyone who
yeah,
was around him, also the end of their lives. As long as it wasn't, children, then,
right, yeah,
you know,
Chargers.
yeah, they were fair game. Uh, and of course you kind of lived for that. Okay, but those became few and far between, as
Towards the end.
time went on. Yeah, I mean, 2014 when we were out there, we ramped it up pretty
Yeah, we were
good.
out every night. It was
Yeah, and then
rough.
it seemed to slow down, and And then after a while, you're just like, what am I doing this for? And I wasn't even sure. And again, I don't want to get into the politics of it. It was just, what the hell are we doing, man? We just
Right.
didn't seem to,
We're just perpetuating the shit show is
yeah,
what we're
exactly. So
about. I mean, you can essentially invade any country and turn them people into combatants. Because if
yeah,
somebody comes into your town, are you going to fight back?
yeah,
Well, no.
exactly. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So
I
that's
mean,
it's the way it works nowadays.
yeah, so, but we did it, been there, done that. And we've got the flew JAVAMan and, got the patch. And so there you go, man.
Yeah,
And we
I
get
never
this.
did get a coin. So whoever watches this has got a coin. Send one to me. I got some Java Man decals. So
Oh, shoot, man. I need one of those. Yeah.
it's in the mail. Send me your address. I'll mail it to
Okay.
you.
All right, brother. Well, we've been at it for an hour here, just kind of doing stories back and forth, which is what I like to hear. So, do you have anything else, man? Anything you remember, or
It's
just
a pleasure working with you, and
yeah,
hopefully
man?
someday. I think they're going to have a reunion coming up. I heard rumors of.
Oh, sweet, man.
So if that happens, you will definitely have to go.
Hopefully, it's
So
somewhere cool.
I heard it was going to be in Right Pat. I think
Oh, right, Pat. Oh, okay.
that's the rumor. I think I don't know. I'll get the details and I'll put them out there
Okay.
for you.
Yeah, yeah. Just let me know, and since we talk a lot, and
Yeah,
of course, most of the pilots were Army guys, and is what it is. So we like to make fun of the Army guys,
I
and
was just a civilian ex-Air Force guy. Civilian.
yeah, which rare, yeah, absolutely. But and then I was one of the few Navy guys there, and just seeing how the Army operated made no sense to me whatsoever. But
Pretty
is
painful.
yeah, they
Painful.
they love to create pain. It's like we talked about. There was this cartoon, and it was a truck. It said U.S. Army, and there's dirt. There's a soldier in the back, and he's shoveling dirt out. There's another soldier in the ground, and he's shoveling dirt back in, and that's exactly don't
I was,
understand it. There's just a reason. There's pain, but there's no reason for the pain. That's the
I
Army.
was. I'll ask Army guys. You ever sweep the sunshine off the sidewalk or mop the rain?
Yeah. Dude, that's something that they would do, like raining outside, like, hey, go out there and mop the floor while it's raining. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
So,
All right, man.
all right,
Well,
brother. It's good talking to you. I appreciate it. And, I'll publish this I'll edit it tonight and then we'll go tomorrow.
yeah,
So,
whatever. Yeah.
all right. And so for, those who are still with us, like and subscribe. And, all right, brother, bunk out.
See ya.
All right,
Late.
man. Later.